Hello, BookTube. I'm back, uh, and I feel a little guilty because I haven't done Comic Book Wednesday in a while, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. This last Wednesday, what I don't, you lose track of time when you're on vacation, but last Wednesday, the only thing that I would have wanted at the comic shop was a $125 hardcover anthology of Spider-Man comics from the 1970s, and I do still want that. But it kills the thrill of that when you know that there are all sorts of sites out there that'll immediately sell it for $50 in stock trades or anything like that. There are like 5 or 6 websites like that, and knowing that just makes me feel like a fool for forking out almost 3 times that price for the hardcover. So I don't do it. So I didn't do it last Wednesday. And the Wednesday before that, there was another Spider-Man anthology, another $125 Spider-Man hardcover. J. Michael Straczynski's run on Spider-Man, the beginning of it anyway, was the week before. So we haven't had comics. I think this coming week will be different. I think there'll be plenty of stuff for us to talk about. But in the meantime, here on vacation, I found some comic books. They're older comic books, but those of you who are interested in comics, I'll label this video so that you'll know what you're going to get. And there, you'll have some. We'll have a little comic book chatter before Wednesday. And they're all Legion related. They're all related to my beloved Legion of Superheroes. Those of you who may be tuning into this video without knowing about comics, they were created 50 years ago. They're a team of superpowered teenagers 1,000 years in the future, fighting supervillains, foiling bank robberies, because these things were done in the 50s, and the writers couldn't imagine that there wouldn't ever come a time when superheroes would be thwarting bank robberies, but also helping on a galactic scale. The Legion, as the name implies, started out small but ended up with a huge roster of teenagers, all of whom having superpowers. And the kind of informal bylaws of the Legion were that you had to be a teenager. First of all, you couldn't be an adult. Your powers had to be natural. They couldn't be technologically induced. And the Legion also had a kind of sort of rule that you couldn't have the same powers as anyone else on the team. That doesn't really make any sense. If you're a super team and you are dedicated to patrolling the space lanes, then if you have 6 applicants, all of whom have Superman level powers and can fly unaided through the vacuum of space, you want all 6 of them. And the Legion does, bend that rule because they've had Superboy and Supergirl on the team. And also, there's a Legionnaire called Mon-El who has Superboy level powers, and so plenty of episodes where he and Superboy are on the team together. But one way or another, the Legion started 50 years ago, and it was a backup feature. They were guest stars in Superboy's own comic. Fans latched onto them right away and loved them. Absolutely loved them. DC got flooded with fan mail from people saying, can we see more of the Legion? Can you add more members to the Legion? Can you have some of the members of the Legion date each other? Can you keep us apprised of that? Can you maybe give them their own comic? Could you maybe give them more than one of their own comics? There was a time, right now, scandalously, there is no Legion comic. DC Comics does not produce a Legion comic, let alone more than one. But once upon a time, they were a surefire thing. They are the most fanatical fan base of any property in DC, including Batman, in my opinion. And I found a bunch of Legion back issues. So I'm going to tell you about them just a little. I promise I won't harp on your patience. The first thing that I got was not specifically Legion. It is instead a spin-off miniseries, a 4-issue miniseries of Cosmic Boy, who was one of the 3 founding members of the Legion of Superheroes, and whose superpower is control of all things metal, of magnetism, super magnetism. And this miniseries was connected to another miniseries that DC was doing called Legends, in which a demagogue convinces the normal populace of the world that superheroes are evil. And it was a chance for DC to shake up the Justice League. It was a chance for them to reintroduce some characters. For instance, it was during the miniseries Legends that the new and updated version of Wonder Woman was reintroduced to the DC continuity. It's a bit of a mess now because the continuity is all over the map now, so no one knows, is any of this canon or is it not? But one of the members in Legends was Cosmic Boy and his girlfriend, Night Girl, who were vacationing in the 20th century from the 30th century when they were caught up in this whole demagogue's plan, and the demagogue's plan turned out to be connected. It was a disguise all the time. It was a Trojan horse for Darkseid, for Apocalypse. So there was a big satisfying, dramatic ending to the Legends graphic novel. And this was a spin-off, The Adventures of Cosmic Boy in the 20th Century. And it ends up being really important in a way that Legends didn't really get into. Oh, actually, you can see on the cover that they call out Legends on the cover to let you know that this is a tie-in. But this miniseries with Cosmic Boy not only tied into Legends, but also opened a door in Legion lore. Because when Cosmic Boy is on Earth in the 20th century, he meets Superman. And Superman doesn't know who he is. And Cosmic Boy says, "What do you mean? You spent your teenage years having adventures with me and all of my friends. What?" It's all news to Superman. In this miniseries, for the first time, the writer, Keith Giffen, introduces the idea that someone has mucked around with time, and that Superman in this continuity never was Superboy. He never put on a costume as a teenager. And if he didn't put on a costume as a teenager, then he never traveled to the 30th century and teamed up with the Legion of Superheroes. All of that was retconned out of existence during this period in DC Comics. All of that all of a sudden became non-canonical. There had never been a Superboy. There had never been team-ups like that in the 30th century, which was heartbreaking for me and a whole bunch of other Legion fans, because we knew that meant fundamental changes were coming to the Legion. And we didn't want that. I still don't like fundamental changes of any kind. I haven't changed my clothes since I've been here. Actually, that's not true. They have rather strict policies here. I don't know. Humans, I'll never understand them. but Keith Giffen was the mastermind behind this miniseries, and he was also the mastermind behind a new launch of the Legion of Superheroes right around the same time, the great 5 years later saga, where the Legion comics by this point had stopped. They had been canceled, and there was a gap. And Keith Giffen decided, he convinced the powers that be at DC Comics to move the timeline forward 5 years without saying what happened in those 5 years. So that all of a sudden you have the Legion, but they're not carefree teenagers anymore. It's not a bright universe anymore. Instead, they're slightly bitter young adults. And the universe has gone to heck in a handbasket. And the 5 years later saga, I and a bunch of other Legion fans objected to it on principle when we heard what it was going to be, because the Legion is supposed to be sunny. It's supposed to be optimistic. It's supposed to be the DC equivalent of Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek universe, a sunlit place, a place where most systematic evils have long since been eradicated. And we didn't want to see that go away, and we shut our gobs as soon as the 5 year later saga started, because it's so good. I showed you some of the issues. I found some of the individual issues of that saga at the same place where I found the issues I'm going to show you now. That saga continued. It went on. It was popular. Fans liked it. The one thing that fans kind of sort of didn't like, I mean, they did like it. They loved all of these older, adult, wry, pessimistic versions of their favorite Legion characters that Keith Giffen was writing and drawing so well. They liked it. But they kind of missed the bright colors and the simplicity of the older Legion. And for a long time, for a couple of years, Todd and Mary Birnbaum, Keith Giffen's writing partners, and Keith Giffen himself kind of sort of ignored that on the fans. We've got a big story to tell. You're all enjoying it. We miss those old days too, but they're gone. So let's tell this story. But after a while, Keith Giffen decided, he thought, oh, well, what if I gave them that? Could I give them that storyline somehow in my own storyline? And he found a way, and it made for great reading, but it even further fatally compromised the Legion continuity, to the point where now the Legion continuity is such a mess that even I can hardly keep it straight. But at one point in the 5 years later saga, it turns out that an evil alien species called the Dominators, who are just pure hissable villains, they've got fangs and bald heads, they take over the Earth in secret. And they're running it into the ground. They're killing millions of people. They're turning it into a gulag, unbeknownst to the general population. And one of the things they're doing in the meantime, while they're doing that, and we're in the course of these issues, month by month, we get this revealed a panel at a time. So a whole year's going by as this story is slowly growing. But one of the things it starts to look like they're doing is growing a batch of young Legionnaires, of growing young clones of exactly the optimistic, colorful period that fans were pining for, that they were growing their own team from the 1950s with all the retro costumes and all the youth and all the older code names. And eventually, that plot comes to light, and it's great. It's a fantastic era in the Legion, no matter what of a mess it makes of the continuity. And during the course of that storyline, Keith Giffen and the Beardbombs raised the possibility that it's not the clones who are the fakes, that it's actually the older Legion that were the manufactured things, and that the real Legion had been kept in stasis, but that they were the real Legion, that the sunlit, simple universe of the Legion never actually did change. Or rather, the universe changed, but the Legion wasn't part of it. The teenagers were sort of in suspended animation, and their duplicates were older. None of that was ever officially cleared up, ever made officially canon one way or another. A new writer coming to if DC were to hire a new writer to do the Legion now, God only knows what they would have to do with any of that. I would advise them to ignore it all and start at the beginning, where Legion of Superheroes #1 is the team's origin story. Some variation on the standard origin story of Saturn Girl, Lightning Lad, and Cosmic Boy coming to Earth for various reasons. Saturn Girl is coming because she's thinking about joining the Science Police. She was the highest graduate from the Saturn's moon Titan. Lightning Lad is coming to Earth to look for his brother, who is missing. And Cosmic Boy is coming to Earth to get a job because his planet is undergoing a massive recession. And they just happen to be on the same space shuttle as the richest man in the galaxy, and they foil an assassination plot together using powers that they have. And the galaxy's richest man says, hey, there's a marketing opportunity here. We could make a super team. And he finances them. Some variation on that origin is what I would have a new writer do, rather than try to deal with any of this stuff. And that's a shame, because that would cut these issues loose, and they are wonderful. There are massive amounts of creativity. But I found a bunch of them. I found a bunch of the issues going straight at the story of the new batch of cloned young Legionnaires. It's right at that time. And God knows when I'll see these in any kind of hardcover collection. It'll be a long time. Long enough so that I can easily justify spending $1 a piece on these issues. So we have all of these. These are all they're written, and their panels are broken down by Keith Giffen. There are some writers who do I have credits? It's very much a Keith Giffen production, but he does bring in. Okay, yeah, these issues are Jason Pearson. I don't know anything about him, but he does inks and finishes on Keith Giffen's panel page breakdowns and character breakdowns and all that. So it's really Keith Giffen just one step removed. And I got to read all these issues. See, there are all the younger Legionnaires. I got to read all of these and just had a blast. These are such great issues. I loved Keith Giffen's whole run on the Legion, which was actually, as long as I'm geeking out on you, I'll shut up in a minute, I promise. But as long as I'm geeking out on you, this is actually the second time that Keith Giffen had a great run on the Legion of Superheroes. The first one was a good solid decade before this, where he did the Great Darkness Saga, a Legion story called the Great Darkness Saga, which you can find in trade paperback. It was instantly recognized as a classic of Legion storytelling. So it's been a graphic novel for a long time. I don't currently have it, but you could easily find it. So that is your slightly fangirling Comic Book Wednesday, slightly displaced. But there were comics in my vacation here. I love these issues. I don't have them anymore now. I'm gonna take this batch when I get back to Hyde Cottage. If I ever go back to Hyde Cottage, I'm gonna take this batch, and I'm gonna find a pile of the single issues that I got last time. Oh, my host is gesturing. He's saying, stay as long as you like. Oh, that's lovely. That is what clutching your heart means, right? That's what that gesture means, isn't it? He's all the color drained out of his face when I mentioned that I might not go back. But in humans, color draining out of the face very quickly is a good sign, isn't it? I'll check later. I'm sure it is. We're going to take these issues, and I'm going to take the single issues I got last time and incorporate them together. See what kind of a long run I have on the Legion. Won't that be fun? I'll do that sometime. I'm thinking that Frida and I will probably go back around the winter when it starts to get cold here. It's pretty now. I don't think there's any reason for us to go. It's pretty now, and then all I have to do is clap my hands for fresh cooked food. Okay, the facial expressions are even worse now than they were before. So I'm gonna wrap this up before I perhaps I've said something wrong. Everybody on BookTube is making a mental note. Don't have Steve as a guest. I think you could all probably have intuited that beforehand. But in case you're wondering, Frida and I are in a package deal. Okay? You don't get her without getting me. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now. I don't think I have any more bookish content today, so you'll have to deal with 2 videos. But I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.